this is our home. It looks the same as it has done for thousands of years. But if you get a bit closer, you can see we've made a few changes.
We've transformed the planet by exploiting the complex system that produced us. Our ability to control our habitat has resulted in rapid population growth and our dominance as a species. Today, our effects can be seen across 80% of the Earth's landmass.
Our world is becoming a man-made world. Wherever you look, you'll see the scale of this supersized transformation. Our generation is changing the face of the planet as never before, building faster than ever, transforming whole landscapes in the blink of an eye. We're opening up the Earth and conquering the sky, making it a place we can call home. Our ingenuity and ambition has enabled us to move around the planet in previously unimaginable ways. We can travel further and faster than at any point in human history. We've connected the furthest reaches of our globe and made travel easier than ever before. The oceans are now bustling highways filled with thousands of ships carrying cargo across the globe. These new connections have helped create our modern world.
Our machines have transformed the planet. So great is our impact on the Earth that it has been used to define a new geological epoch. The Anthropocene, the human epoch. If you add together all the landscapes we've altered, our cities, towns, villages and farmland, then 75% of the Earth's ice-free landmass owes its appearance to us. This truly is a human planet.
This is the story of how one species changed a planet.
After 180,000 nomadic years, and thanks to a more clement climate, humans settled down. They no longer depended on hunting for survival. They chose to live in wet environments that abounded in fish, game, and wild plants, there where land, water, and life combine. The invention of agriculture turned our history on end. It was less than 10,000 years ago. Agriculture was our first great revolution. It resulted in the first surpluses and gave birth to cities and civilizations. The memory of thousands of years scrabbling for food faded. Having made grain the yeast of life, we multiplied the number of varieties and learned to adapt them to our soils and climates. We're like every species on Earth. Our principal daily concern is to feed ourselves. When the soil is less than generous and the water becomes scarce, we are able to deploy prodigious efforts to extract from the land enough to live on. But after relying on muscle power for so long, humankind found a way to tap into the energy buried deep in the earth.
The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly.
America was the first to harness the phenomenal revolutionary power of black gold. In the fields, machines replaced men. A liter of oil generates as much energy as 100 pairs of hands in 24 hours.
In a single lifetime, the well-being of millions has improved beyond measure. Health, wealth, security, longevity, never have so many had so much. Yet 1 billion are malnourished.
In the United States, only 3 million farmers are left. They produce enough grain to feed 2 billion people. But most of that grain is not used to feed people. Here, and in all other industrialized nations, it's transformed into livestock feed or biofuels. The pocket of sunshine's energy chased away the specter of drought that stalked farmland. No spring escapes the demands of agriculture, which accounts for 70% of humanity's water consumption. In nature, everything is linked. The expansion of cultivated land and single-crop farming encouraged the development of parasites. Pesticides, another gift of the petrochemical revolution, exterminated them. Bad harvests and famine became a distant memory. The biggest headache now was what to do with the surpluses engendered by modern agriculture. But toxic pesticides seeped into the air, soil, plants, animals, rivers, and oceans. They penetrated the heart of cells similar to the mother cell that is shared by all forms of life. Are they harmful to the humans that they released from hunger? These farmers, in their yellow protective suits, probably have a good idea. Then came fertilizers, another petrochemical discovery. They produced unprecedented results on plots of land thus far ignored. Crops adapted to soils and climates gave way to the most productive varieties and the easiest to transport. And so, in the last century, 3/4 of the varieties developed by farmers over thousands of years have been wiped out. As far as the eye can see, fertilizer below, plastic on top. The greenhouses of Almeria in Spain are Europe's vegetable garden. A city of uniformly sized vegetables waits every day for the hundreds of trucks that will take them to the continent's supermarkets.
Aral Sea, which at one time was the 4th largest lake in the world. But the diversion of water from the rivers for cotton irrigation has caused it to dry up.
Poor irrigation has resulted in the loss of approximately 900 cubic kilometers of the Aral Sea.
By the 1980s, water feeding into the Aral Sea had become so scarce that the sea was evaporating away. The sea's water level dropped more than 50 feet by 1989. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, regional governments tried to conserve water and forestall the demise of the sea. But their efforts were poorly coordinated, and so by 2000, the sea level declined by a total of 125 feet. The shoreline narrowed considerably, as seen in this satellite imagery. The sea divided first into smaller pools, then narrow lakes. The northern Aral Sea and the southern Aral Sea. They were over 3 times as salty as the original water. Fish and other life died off. Isolated islands in the sea that were once secure sites for Soviet germ warfare tests became vulnerable to land access as water evaporated away. Salt and industrial chemicals once dissolved in the water were carried as dust to the land, causing disease.
Soil is a mixture of minerals from broken down rocks and nutrients from organic matter. It takes more than 500 years to create just 2 centimeters of it. In China, deforestation and overgrazing means soils are being degraded 30 times faster than the planet's natural processes can replenish them. In Australia, clearing large areas of bush for farmland has allowed salt to infiltrate the topsoil, damaging around 60,000 square kilometres.
In some parts of Madagascar, the erosion is spectacular. Whole hillsides bear deep gashes hundreds of meters wide. Thin and fragile, soil is made by living matter. With erosion, the fine layer of humus, which took thousands of years to form, disappears. On the hills of Haiti, only 2% of the forests are left. Stripped bare, nothing holds the soils back. The rainwater washes them down the hillsides as far as the sea. What's left is increasingly unsuitable for agriculture. Once the pearl of the Caribbean, Haiti can no longer feed its population without foreign aid. Charcoal is one of the population's main consumables. Over 2 billion people, almost a third of the world's population, still depend on charcoal. Deforestation is a last resort to survive. The world's largest rainforest, the Amazon, has already been reduced by 20%. The forest gives way to cattle ranches or soybean farms. 95% of these soybeans are used to feed livestock and poultry in Europe and Asia. And so, a forest is turned into meat. When they burn, forests and their soils release huge quantities of carbon, accounting for 20% of the greenhouse gases emitted across the globe. Deforestation is one of the principal causes of global warming. Barely 20 years ago, Borneo, the 4th largest island in the world, was covered by a vast primary forest. At the current rate of deforestation, it will have totally disappeared within 10 years. Borneo, what was one of the Earth's greatest reservoirs of biodiversity. This catastrophe was provoked by the decision to produce palm oil, one of the most productive and consumed oils in the world, on Borneo. Palm oil not only caters to our growing demand for food, but also cosmetics, detergents, and increasingly, alternative fuels. The forest diversity was replaced by a single species, the oil palm. For local people, it provides employment. It is an agricultural industry. Another example of massive deforestation is the eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is used to make paper pulp. Plantations are growing as demand for paper has increased 5-fold in 50 years. One forest does not replace another forest. At the foot of these eucalyptus trees, nothing grows because their leaves form a bed that is toxic for most other plants. They grow quickly, but exhaust water reserves. Soybeans, palm oil, Eucalyptus trees. Deforestation destroys the essential to produce the superfluous.
In total, 25% of the world's farmland has now been degraded as an inadvertent consequence of our drive to increase food production.
The more a country develops, the more meat its inhabitants consume. Faster and faster, like the life cycle of livestock which may never see a meadow. Manufacturing meat faster than the animal has become a daily routine. In these vast food lots trampled by millions of cattle, not a blade of grass grows. A fleet of trucks from every corner of the country brings in tons of grain, soy meal, and protein-rich granules that will become tons of meat. The result is that it takes 100 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of potatoes, 4,000 liters for 1 kilo of rice, and 13,000 liters for 1 kilo of beef. We have forgotten that resources are scarce. 500 million humans live in the world's desert lands, more than the combined population of Europe. They know the value of water. They know how to use it sparingly. Here, they depend on wells replenished by fossil water, which accumulated underground in the days when it rained on these deserts, 25,000 years ago. Fossil water also enables crops to be grown in the desert to provide food for local populations. The field's circular shape derives from the pipes that irrigate them around a central pivot. But there is a heavy price to pay. Fossil water is a non-renewable resource. In Saudi Arabia, the dream of industrial farming in the desert has faded. As if on a parchment map, the light spots on this patchwork show abandoned plots. The irrigation equipment is still there, the energy to pump water also. But the fossil water reserves are severely depleted.
The veins and arteries of our water supply are the lifeblood of our civilization, and the human version of this planetary cycle operates at a global scale. We have altered the planet's water cycle to such an extent that 5 times as much fresh water is stored in reservoirs as flows in all the world's rivers. This is part of the Colorado River system. Along its 2,000-kilometre length, it has over 20 dams. So much water is diverted to the cities and farmland of the American West that most years it no longer reaches the sea. The biggest city it supplies is Los Angeles. Fresh water is delivered across hundreds of kilometres of desert via a network of aqueducts, canals and pipelines. This system delivers 90% of the city's fresh water. Without it, LA wouldn't exist.
Faster and faster. The more the world develops, the greater its thirst for energy. Everywhere, machines dig, bore, and rip from the earth the pieces of stars buried in its depths since its creation. Minerals.
We can slice the tops off mountains and dig holes big enough to bury a city. In a single year, we now move more earth and rock than all the natural processes of erosion put together. Our machines have transformed the planet.
Dubai is a sort of culmination of the Western model, a country where the impossible becomes possible, building artificial islands in the sea, for example. Dubai has few natural resources, but with the money from oil, it can bring millions of tons of material and workers from all over the planet. Dubai has no farmland, but it can import food. Dubai has no water, but it can afford to expend immense amounts of energy to desalinate seawater and build the highest skyscrapers in the world. Dubai has endless sun, but no solar panels.
History tells us that we don't tend to run out of resources. Instead, when push comes to shove, we find new ones. But that is a lesson from human history. The planet's history is perhaps a more important lesson for us. It's a lesson about the most dramatic human influence on the planet. The speed and scale at which we're changing the atmosphere. Levels of carbon dioxide and methane are higher than at any time in the last 15 million years. We can already see some of the effects. The thickness of Arctic sea ice has almost halved. Some of the extra carbon dioxide we've pumped into the atmosphere has been absorbed by the oceans. This has increased their acidity by 30%, hindering the growth of marine creatures like corals. Over the last few decades, the frequency of extreme hurricanes has doubled in some areas. We're at the beginning of a dramatic period of change. At the heart of it is the greenhouse effect, a global warming caused by the gases we release.
Our oil tankers are getting bigger and bigger. Our energy requirements are constantly increasing. We try to power growth like a bottomless oven that demands more and more fuel. We're not changing our model. Oil might run out. We can still extract oil from the tar sands of Canada. The biggest trucks in the world move thousands of tons of sand. The process of heating and separating bitumen from the sand requires millions of cubic meters of water. Colossal amounts of energy are needed. The pollution is catastrophic. Our mode of development has not fulfilled its promises. In 50 years, the gap between rich and poor has grown wider than ever. Today, half the world's wealth is in the hands of the richest 2% of the population. Can such disparities be maintained? They're the cause of population movements whose scale we have yet to fully realize. All over the planet, the poorest scrabble to survive on scraps, while we continue to dig for resources that we can no longer live without.
Now, most of the remaining oil on Earth lies underground in less industrially developed countries. In order to get that oil, and to get it as cheaply as possible, Western companies have devastated environments and caused terrible human suffering. People in Western societies are largely unaware of the harm caused from oil extraction. We are unaware because it goes unreported. And as oil becomes scarce and prices rise, the environmental destruction and human suffering will likely increase. And the competition for oil will get more aggressive.
One of the most common questions that people ask is, do you think that the peak oil that you read about is going to produce a global catastrophe? And my answer is, it already has. There are people dying right now as we're speaking. There are people dying right now over oil. There are governments being twisted and changed and seized over oil. The climate is changing because of oil. And there's a small group of very, very wealthy people who are getting richer and richer because of oil.
Is there a possibility of conflict? Absolutely. And I also think that there is an increasing, huge danger of civil conflict and civil war inside oil exporters themselves.
The dictator of Tomania, the conqueror of Austerlitz, the future emperor of the world. Speak. I can't. You must. It's our only hope.
I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
It is we, the peoples, who are embarking today on a journey towards a more sustainable and equitable future. Our journey will involve governments, the United Nations system and other international institutions, local authorities, indigenous peoples, civil society, business and the private sector, the scientific and the academic community, and all people.
Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive.
This interconnectedness among humans on the planet is creating a global village, where the barriers of national and international boundaries become less relevant and the world a smaller place. The road ahead may be fraught with difficulties, challenges, and struggles, but we must dare each other to be visionary, to be ambitious, to be leaders. Given the opportunity, we can raise ourselves. We must join hands with the rest of creation and speak of common sense, responsibility, solidarity, and peace.
It's time to come together. What's important is not what's gone, but what remains. We still have half the world's forests, thousands of rivers, lakes, and glaciers, and thousands of thriving species. We know that the solutions are there today. We all have the power to change. So what are we waiting for?